All right, who's ready for a resilient marriage? Okay, here's some data for you. For starters, every 16 seconds, a marriage happens in the US. Every 42 seconds, a divorce happens in the US. Over a 40-year period, 67% of first marriages terminate, and the average marriage that ends lasts about 8 years. This is the State of the Union. This is something we need to know. So clearly marriages need some holy resilience. And what is a holy resilience? I go to 2 Corinthians 3. At the very end, it says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And it jumps to 2 Corinthians 4:8. I want to read this to you because this is what we feel in marriage. This is the tension. Now we have this treasure in clay jars so that this extraordinary power is from God and not from us. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. We are persecuted, but not abandoned. We are struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry the death of Jesus in our body so that the life of Jesus may also be displayed in our body. And then it continues, so that we can be like the prophets who believed and therefore speak, and they never gave up. Because we have the Spirit of the Lord in us, there is a freedom that enables us to never give up. And marriage is a very acute place where you are confronted with this every single day. And so a resilient marriage, I would pose to you today, requires 3 things: surrender, unity, and partnership. So let's talk about surrender first. Surrender requires 2 people from different families of origin, different traumas, different backgrounds, different faith backgrounds, different traditions, different rhythms, different ways of connecting and relating and attachment. And all of a sudden, God says, you become one. Does that sound like an easy union? Right? Gabe and I thought we were so alike until we got married. And then all of a sudden I realized he leaves every light on all the time. And then my kids get that gene from him. And Kate and I guess apparently the other one in the family with OCD walks around every night and turns every single light off. I was like, who is paying this electric bill? But the point is I realized early on that there was a surrender required. And we don't always, in this context, talk about our family. So I'm gonna give a picture of our family because this is what mamas do. Okay, yeah, here are the people. When you get married, sometimes there's offspring. And so we've got Cade, a Christian Lyons. He was born 3 years after we were married. We said we'd wait for 5 years to have kids. God had other plans. Right at 3 years, Cade was born, and 6 hours later, the doctor came to us and said, we see signs of Down syndrome in your baby. And as you can imagine, we're in our 20s. I was 26. We are babies having babies. And not only is this entree to motherhood traumatic in many ways, he was failure to thrive, 4.5 pounds, full term, I had no fluid, emergency C-section. He's whisked off to the NICU before I can even hold him. And all of a sudden we find out Down syndrome. And so because we didn't even know how to be parents, much less special needs parents, all of a sudden there was a surrender required to what we thought parenting would look like. We had an imagination of our firstborn, and he would look a lot like Gabe, who played football and All-State and be a quarterback. And it was Cade. And it was God's kind provision of what our surrender journey would look like. And then he brought Pierce. 2 years later, 2 years after that, he brought Kennedy. And Kennedy wanted a baby sister so bad. In fact, she would pray about it, and she would tape these prayers up in her closet after watching the movie War Room. Thank you very much. And she's like, God, I pray that we will have a baby sister. And little did she know I had had 3 C-sections, which the doctor required at the end because of all the scar tissue to tie my tubes. So I said, well, maybe that's for you when you become a mom, that you will have your daughters and maybe extra daughters. And so we bought her puppies instead. We still had those puppies for 14 years, but she did not quit praying. And the thing that terrified us, a Down syndrome diagnosis that we surrendered to a new reality 13 years later, God knew he would give us Cade because 13 years later, he would give us a joy and we would say yes. This time we wanted the chance to choose Down syndrome. So be careful what your daughter prays about in the closet and tapes up on the wall. Now we have 2 boys and 2 girls. And the second piece of sacrifice and surrender, right, is it requires unity. The thing with Gabe and I is we have learned that we can fight about something, which we're really good at. We're professional fighters in marriage. We're passionate people. We both think we're right. We have different ways of doing things, and it's always the last man standing. But at some point, if you can't beat them, you join them. You know, he loves golf. I didn't get it. And then I thought, you know, when our kids leave home, I can resent him for the next 20 years or I can join him. And I got lessons, and now we play golf together, and we bring Joy on my cart and Cade on Gabe's cart, and it's like a professional golf putt-putt situation with us being their caddies, basically. We give them snacks, they putt-putt golf, and this is kind of their idea of our empty nesting. So this is what it looks like. So unity, but unity requires a shared vision, not just of today, but also of your future. And it got interesting that as we started this nonprofit, it was a joy to actually begin what was then called Q, which is now called Thinq, came out of the reality of Cade's birth. What we thought was important in that day, we kind of became back burner. And the thing that we had overlooked became front and center. And all of a sudden we had unity, a shared vision for the future, to advocate for the marginalized, to go for to be all the things that you're hearing in these 2 days. Be justice and mercy for those who need it, to be advocates like the Holy Spirit commands us to do, one who pleads on behalf of someone else. And that is every single talk that you're hearing yesterday and today. You will go home at some point and you will process what you have heard, and you will weep as a result of different lives being impacted. And Cade was that for us. He broke our hearts for the things that break God's heart. The unity and the shared vision of a future is so important, because it's not just about our generation, but it's about what are the generations going ahead of us. And the final thing that this requires is partnership. A few years ago, Gabe and I were doing this. And we went to see some college friends who had stood with us in our wedding. And Gabe calls 2012 the year of Rebekah, and then he keeps saying that it's been every year since, which is not true at all. But what it did mean is that I began a vocational track over here about 14 years ago, coming out of panic disorder and rescue and mental health and faith, and started writing books and teaching on that. And then Gabe's home sometimes, with the kids, doing laundry and dishes. And all of a sudden we're like, we've got a partner in this. If we're saying yes to joy and we're bringing this in, and our empty nesting version of the reality of the rest of our lives looks like we're always caregiving full time, then we cannot build resilient lives alone, okay? We cannot have a resilient marriage without the unity and the partnership of one another. So now, very much, we look like 2 callings under one roof. We co-parent, we co-labor, we co-do all these things. And our friends challenged us, find a way where you can have these concentric circles where you do things together. So obviously, this is Gabe's call: cultural renewal and reform and thought leaders. And sometimes in this room, I feel so intimidated and like not smart. And then my call is on mental health and faith and writing. And then we co-labor through retreats for marriages and parenting and mental health. And all of a sudden, God's going, I'm big enough to help you have a holy imagination of what partnership looks like. Partnership was never about the wife's over here doing this role and the husband's over here doing this role. It's like, how do you actually round each other out? Make this beautiful, compassionate expression as a couple in everything that you touch. And that's my challenge for us. Let's not live side by side. Let's live face to face. Let's engage with one another's hearts, and let's spur one another on for the mission that God has entrusted to you as one. Thank you.